Why is being a good communicator so foundational to your success?
As a solution architect, it's probably the most important skill you can have.
Say I am listening and I wish I was a better communicator. How do you practically push yourself to develop these skills?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question actually. And
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Power Talks. My name is Griffin, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and today I'm joined by Josh Giles. Now, Josh, you would describe yourself as a good communicator, and I kind of wanted to ask you off the bat, why is being a good communicator so foundational to your success as a consultant, developer, architect in the Power Platform?
I think communication, especially in what my role is as a solution architect, is probably the most important skill you can have. Being able to effectively communicate with, stakeholders, C-suites, other technical people, it's a really foundational skill to have, and I feel like it can be overlooked, maybe in favour for more technical expertise, but the soft skills and communication is extremely important, in my opinion, as a role as a solution architect to project success, really.
For sure. So in getting to know you, you said that you've not always been a good communicator. Now, I feel like it's funny, you're smirking there. I feel like there's a story here. I would love to hear more of this story. I mean, what has your communication journey looked like? Because I think it's very normal that a lot of people, aren't just naturally good speakers and good communicators and everything that means. So what's the story there? I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, so it's probably not so much as a story, but I think certainly my kind of background and my journey into where I am now has had a massive impact on that. So I started off very much as a kind of infrastructure type, so IT support, very much a stereotypical kind of in a dark room type thing. If you've seen like The Office or IT Crowd, very much like that. So and it's a very common experience, I think, for a lot of people coming from that type of background, where they're very, very good from a technical perspective, but maybe not so much from a communication perspective, right? So one of the things I wanted to do was kind of just push myself a little bit more and work on my communication skills and actively just try harder to be a better communicator, from listening to speaking. Part of the kind of push of that was to be more active in the community and Power Platform community in the past, couple of years, doing my first in-person talk this year, and doing some virtual events last year. So I feel like that's really kind of made me, one, it's pushed me outside my comfort zone massively, but it's also helped me a great deal as a result. So I think if anyone wants to improve communication skills, you need to get yourself out of that comfort zone, and really just do something that you maybe normally wouldn't do. I'm a very introverted person generally, but stepping on stage or being on a call and an event can really help you get all that kind of insular kind of feeling and really come into your own. So yeah, it's a great way to do it.
For sure. I completely agree with what you're saying, and that it requires you to push yourself and step outside of your comfort zone. And you mentioned that you had done some virtual events and now you're doing an in-person event. And maybe that's the answer to this next question, but like, what does push yourself like practically mean? Say I am listening and I wish I was a better communicator. And again, we're not necessarily talking about public speaking. This could be, on a Teams call and communicating to the client. But like, I mean, how do you practically push yourself to develop these skills and, of effective communication?
Yeah, I think for me it's repetition. The more you do it, the more experience you gain, and you sort of end up feeling a bit more confident about it. You could do it once and then not again, and you wouldn't really get anywhere. But that constant kind of keep going type attitude, I feel like really has an impact on it. You know, that there's a lot of time, a lot of people in this space can have imposter syndrome and really kind of question their worth. And I think it's important to kind of realise that, you know, a lot of the time everyone's bringing something to the table, and being able to kind of work with that, know your worth, and working towards, you know, being confident in that really helps. And that kind of, I guess for me, is what I'm striving to do typically, is, you know, the more I get myself outside this comfort zone, the more I realise that, you know, I know what my worth is, and you know, challenge that imposter syndrome that can sometimes creep in. So that's how I tend to do it.
Okay, so yes, I have a question though. So I often find that a lot of times over teams and you know, I work virtually in different things, that a lot of times, you know, communication can be missed. And you're talking about repetition. Now, I guess I got ahead of myself. Are you a sports guy, Josh? Are you a sports guy? You won't offend me if you're not a sports guy.
I like the thought of sports,
okay.
But I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a massive
okay,
sports.
all right. Neither here nor there then. But like it, if you practice, you know, you practice, you do the same rep, you know, over and over and over and over, right? I mean, I played American football, and we would just practice one step for 5 minutes. The first step, boom, over, boom, boom, you know, and you do that every day. You know, we call them our everydayers, the type of drills that we did at the beginning of practice. And over time, you're talking about, you know, repetition, and I completely agree that repetition builds confidence, because then when the time comes in the game, I don't need to be thinking about, okay, my first step needs to look like this, you know, because I can have confidence in that my experience, you know, that I can crush out this first step. Now I can actually think about something else, something that's more important on game day, right? I also think that I love the psychology of all this too. I had learned that, you know, our brains have a hard time distinguishing, take this with a grain of salt, but have a hard time distinguishing reality from our imagination. And so specifically what that means is, like, as an athlete, for like visualizing me playing the game, visualizing me doing that first step. Like, my brain, when it comes to game time, isn't thinking about, oh, I did 1,000 reps of this in practice, but I only did 6 reps of this in a game. I only done 6 reps. No, my brain is thinking, I've done this 1,006 times, right? And so I think that, okay, so how does this apply to work? Because if you're listening, you're probably not a high school football player or a college football player or whatever, right? So how does this apply as being a consultant? I think a lot of times, you know, this doesn't necessarily mean, you know, speaking at the Power Platform conference, or, you know, leading a virtual event, or doing, this could be something as simple as like in your one-on-one meeting with a colleague, you know, and just getting reps, or speaking by yourself, you know, and just like sharing, communicating your thoughts, or like doing if you have a big meeting coming up, you know, doing the presentation right before there's people in the room, because that way you can kind of understand, okay, I want to use this transition here between slides. I want to think about, you know, I want to share this example, use this metaphor or whatever. So I completely agree. I know I just I just yapped there for a few minutes. So I appreciate you sharing. Let me take that. But I mean, back to teams. So again, I work fully remote. I know, do you work fully remote, or at least partially remote? Right?
Mostly remote, yeah.
Exactly.
Mostly.
So a lot of our communication is through Teams calls, right? And I am always in awe sometimes of like how clearly I feel like I say something, or how clearly I feel like I understand what was said, and then someone else is like, oh, did you mean this? And it, like, in my opinion, way misses the mark, you know, whatever. Or I'm the one that's wrong, right? I mean, why is communication why is ensuring effective communication even more important in our scenario and like what we do for work, especially considering the remoteness of our communication?
I think, it's foundational, isn't it? Because look at an example of your meeting with a client to get requirements to build a Power Platform solution. If you miss that mark, or is not, you don't get that requirement fully understood, you could end up creating something completely different to the client's vision, right? And part of the job, I feel, as an architect is to make sure that we're delivering what the client wants and what their vision is, but also bridging that gap between what the business needs and what's technically achievable. And you have to have a really good understanding of, obviously, the technical side of what's possible, but you need to be able to understand what the client's wanting and what they're saying to you, and being able to take that and actually translate it. So, the communication plays a massive part in that, in my opinion. If we're not understanding that we're not able to effectively do our jobs as to what we want to deliver for a client. So being able to be effective with that communication, and sometimes direct as well. I feel like sometimes, particularly, I don't know whether you experience it as much being on the other side of the pond, but certainly in the UK we can be quite passive in our communication, and sometimes that doesn't work well. Sometimes I feel you just have to be a bit kind of direct and actually say what's needed and said, rather than trying to kind of go around and skirt around the problem. That can have a key part. Sometimes these conversations aren't easy ones, but when we try and just work our way around them instead of just getting to the bottom of the problem, it really can have a detrimental effect to the outcome of that thing. So yeah, directness is certainly a key aspect I feel can sometimes be of benefit to good communication, right?
Definitely. I find I tend to be someone who has fairly thick skin. I don't necessarily get offended if somebody said they hated the Power Talk series. Okay, that's fine. You can watch something else, I'd say. But nonetheless, I generally have pretty thick skin, but I often forget that some people don't speak that way, or receive information well that way. And so I think that a lot of times I think, okay, your message says this is what you mean, this is what you said. There'd be no reason why you filtered what you said, but oftentimes you might still have to. I kind of wanted to ask you as well, like, I think kind of like you're saying, a lot of times little things can be missed, and you slightly miss the mark on a pain point or the actual business need, requirement. I mean, I think a really easy way to beat that is over communication, in a sense of, hey, we just conclude at the end of the meeting talking about everything that we discussed and some of the action items, and then after the meeting ends, sending an email basically saying the exact same thing, and copying everybody, and then a couple days later following up on the email if you didn't hear anything or whatever, like over communication. But kind of wanted to ask you, play devil's advocate, how do you balance like over communication, beneficial over communication, with annoying over communication? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, actually, and I think that balance can be really hard to get, because you don't want to feel like you're pestering someone. At the same time, if you need that information and you're still waiting on it, a week down the line, 2 weeks down the line, you kind of again just have to apply that directness and be it email or follow up with a call or something to actually get that answer. And a lot of the time, maybe it's someone not coming back to you because they don't understand the question, but they're not maybe forthcoming in why that is. I find sometimes you have to do the slightly terrible thing and go above and beyond that person and to the next person in the chain to get things done. And that, I guess that's just part of the job, is knowing who the best person to speak to is at the right time, to ensure that you can meet deadlines, get correct requirements and bottom everything out. So yeah, it's certainly a tricky one to get right, and I don't think there's one answer that fits all scenarios, sadly. I wish there was, because it'd make my job a lot easier.
If you are thinking to yourself that you want to get into low-code development or learn about the Power Platform, then I want to personally invite you to sign up for this completely free self-paced course that is going to cover everything you need to know to begin low-code development today. Not too long ago, I was a complete beginner and I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know what the Power Platform was. But in just 2 years, I have gone from being an associate to a senior level consultant, and I can truly say that I love what I do. The content in this course is handpicked by me so you can understand the basics of the Power Platform and ultimately be prepared to take the PL 900 certification if that's something you're interested in. If you are interested, be sure to follow the first link in the description down below, and do not forget to use the promo code YouTube at checkout in order to get the course for completely free. This is going to give you immediate access to the entire course so that you can start to change your future today. Now, let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, absolutely. I find too, like, I will admit, there's some emails I get that I probably look at for like 6 seconds. I'm like, all right, delete, you know. I'm the type of person that keeps a super clean email. You know, you will not find my email with like thousands of notifications and different things or unread emails. You know, I tend to clean it out almost too much. But I think too, like, kind of sticking on email communications especially, I think a lot of people underutilize just simply like boldening or italicizing the actual question or purpose of your email. You know, I'm not saying your email should be shortened to one sentence, but you know, if the purpose of your email is to ask one question, like, hey Josh, comma, a paragraph of context, double enter, bold question, double enter, more context, you know, best regards, comma, Griffin Lickfeld. You know, I feel like just doing that, I mean, everybody appreciates conciseness, you know, and if they feel like they need the context to answer the question, then they can take the time to read. I mean, what's your experience, I guess, just with that? Am I crazy here? I mean, are people missing out? You know, what's going on?
Yeah, no, definitely not. I think that's the way to go, right? I feel Teams muddies the waters a little bit, or you know, if people are using things like Slack or whatever, because that's a really great way to get communication across. Because you can a lot of the time you can be a lot more direct with it. You can do things like tag the person and, you know, keep the communication visible to others as well, which is great. So, now, where particularly within projects, certainly my preference, if we're able to with the client, is to go down the Teams route, because it makes things a lot easier. You know, if they're on holiday, for example, and I'm needing an update, well, at least I know I can just, you know, tag the whole team and someone will come back with an answer. So that makes it a lot easier. You know, from an email front, you're kind of, you're going blind a lot of the time. You know, you're sending it to these recipients, and you don't know what's happened. The moment you hit send, you don't know if it's getting hit by, you know, caught in the spam filters, or they're just not looking at it, or what the script is with it. So certainly feel like the invention of Teams and direct communication has been a good game changer within communication aspects of projects, definitely.
I agree, and I feel like a super easy win is like use the bold, use the italicize, use the bullet points, use the font colors. Like, there's all sorts of stuff you can do just in normal Teams chats that 99% of, you know, people and messages, even I send, you know, don't use. But I often find, especially if communicating with the client, longer things like internal chats, you know, internal project teams are one thing, you know, but if it's customer facing, especially like you're talking about, like almost like C-suite level people that we're talking to, you know, you got about 30 seconds of their attention, you know, and they just want to know the bottom line and get in and get out. And so I think that, like, I think the ability to, I've said a couple times on this show, I think there's the two biggest skills, and these probably apply to just bigger than what we do, is like most important skills is one, your ability to learn, which we're not talking about right now, and two is your ability to communicate. And that means so many different things, but one part of that is being able to communicate like very concisely without missing important information. Like the art of word choice, like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
and does
Yeah,
this
definitely.
word that I'm saying actually communicate what I want it to communicate, or is this just like the fanciest synonym of good I can think of? You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly. Yeah. I feel as well. A lot of less experienced people tend to overcomplicate communication. If they're very technically minded, they'll be very focused on the technical, and that will end up maybe tripping them up, or clients won't understand it. Whereas if you just tone it back and keep it simple, it can have a bigger impact on the overall kind of outcome, and that's the important thing.
yeah, thank you for bringing that up, actually, because I mean, I am not a technical resource. I do not know code. I told a buddy one time I knew some fetch XML, and he laughed at me. He's a computer science guy. I could not do my job without some of the technical resources that I've on projects and things I work with. So I'm not discrediting them in any way. But I do feel like it's the age-old tale of, technical resources sometimes struggle with communicating to clients, which clients oftentimes are about as far out of the technical realm as possible. I was dealing with a customer where they use Dataverse, Microsoft Dynamics, and they didn't understand what a lookup column was. They just thought it was a hyperlink to more information. That's what they called lookups, hyperlinks, for the first 2 weeks of the project. And eventually we're like, all right, let's explain lookups, So that's who we need to communicate to, and we're getting all this jargon from technical people. I feel like, that's like the one of the biggest value adds of the functional side of the consulting realm. Because I feel like you're saying, I also have, I'm not gonna name drop, no name drops, no project name drops, whatever, but we're on a little bit more of a technical call, and we're talking about inputs and outputs of this, this connection, custom connector, basically. And our technical resource starts sharing their screen and is showing stuff that, makes no sense to me, but really no one on the call is actually able to, it just wasn't digestible. It's not that it was incorrect. It just, the means by which we were trying to communicate this was just not digestible, but to them, it was crystal clear, made perfect sense, and they're highlighting line 186 and line 400 lines of JSON. But, it's like, okay, let's take this step back, and communicate a little bit differently and showcase a different way. And sure enough, I was able to, fortunately I had some stuff kind of prepared, was able to show what I had, and we wrapped up the meeting a little early, was able to shoot him over what we had, and it was good. And I just was sharing exactly what he was sharing, but it's digestible, I don't know if you have anything else to add there. But yeah, on communication there and bridging that gap, what actually, let me ask that question. What's your experience in bridging that technical to customer gap? And maybe any good stories from you there.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the key things is learning. If you're not always learning something new, particularly in that space that you're passionate about, so in my case, Power Platform, then you're gonna do yourself a bit of a disservice, because you need to understand a lot of concepts. There's so much to learn within Power Platform, especially, that you're never going to know it all. You're never going to be a master of everything. I like to see myself as a bit of a generalist. I've got enough knowledge across the full spectrum of Power Platform to understand kind of what does and doesn't work. And when it then comes to the client side, is you're able to apply that at a very kind of I guess, high level, because you can understand the concepts. If you don't understand the concepts, it becomes really challenging. One of the things that I've kind of started saying to myself recently is that a lot of the time, the client doesn't really care about the technology. They don't care about what it is that we are using to actually deliver. All they care about is that, does it solve this business need? And, as long as we're kind of thinking that way, I feel like that has a really big impact. They don't necessarily care about what Dataverse is. They don't care what a Canvas app is. For all they know, it could be a React app, it could be a SQL database. It doesn't matter at that level. As long as they know that, okay, if I submit a form, it's going to be stored in the database, then that's fine. That's all they need to know. So I think at a high level, just understanding concepts and then being able to say at a high level to a client kind of what it is that you're looking to do, but almost trying to remove a lot of that technical element, and that really kind of helps in that communication aspect.
Yeah. It's like pulling the certain information out, like you're getting a lot and we need to filter it almost,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Awesome. I would love to transition the conversation a little bit. Similar topic, but a little different, I don't think anyone would argue that, diversity in personalities types on a project team is a bad thing. I think everybody would agree that, that is a good thing. And I know in getting to know you and just in our conversation, I mean, you're a super approachable dude, like friendly guy, you got the smile going, you look great, I guess I kind of wanted to ask you, why do you think that that personality type has served you well, and why do you think it's beneficial to be so approachable and friendly as a consultant?
I think because we're dealing with people most of our day, right? There's never a time when we're not, interacting with customers or internal teams. So you kind of go into this job kind of realizing that if you don't like that interaction, you probably stay more on the development side, because a lot of the time you can just be, behind a screen doing, VS Code and doing your whatever code it is you're doing, and the interaction might be a bit more limited. But as consultants, as architects, there's always going to be interactions with people. Day to day, you must speak to so many different people, both internally and externally. That again really helps with helping me be more effective in my day to day, come out my shell a little bit more, and be a little bit less introverted. I think as well, you have to understand kind of what personality you can bring to the table as that kind of persona as well. I think everyone is different, and that's a great thing. But you also have to be approachable and friendly to a manner. I've dealt with consultants and architects in the past, and they're very, very direct speaking, very kind of not very approachable, and that in my opinion can be sometimes a bit troublesome, because then you feel less inclined to want to approach them maybe for advice or that type of thing. So being approachable is extremely important in my opinion to do what we do.
Yeah. So you brought up the words imposter syndrome, and I know a lot of people love to discuss this topic, and we haven't really discussed it on this show. So I'm kind of thinking about diving into it. I mean, in getting to know you, maybe this is wrong, but I feel like people who are, the friendly, approachable, easygoing sort of people tend to also be people pleasers. And I don't mean this in an offensive way, by no means, And I also think that sort of personality might give itself, I feel like people with that personality might also struggle with imposter syndrome as well, because they see themselves as this, I want to help as many people as possible, and I don't know if I can do that, if I'm the right person to do that. I want to be friendly. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. That might not be able to be me. And I feel like some people on the inverse of that, if they're especially direct, sometimes they can feel like they know everything, and oh, I'm the person for the job and whatever. So I guess painting that picture, like, why is it that you think, people with this personality type might also struggle to stand up for themselves or struggle with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I think from my experience, imposter syndrome's been something that's always been kind of lingering. I always feel like I'm maybe not good enough, or I shouldn't be where I am. But then, I think a lot of it, when you then start to actually break it down and think about kind of everything that I learn, I'm continuing to learn things every day. I'm very open to learning. I'm, able to deliver, company objectives or whatever projects and successfully with great feedback. That kind of helps with that a little bit. I think as well, coming from a background where, I don't come from a software development background. I don't, I come from an infrastructure background. My experience was with building computers from, when I was still in school, and then I've transitioned into this software development in the past kind of 7-ish years. And, you do constantly feel like there's always someone better than you, and that can be a real kind of difficult thing to deal with. So I think if you approach it or from the standpoint of that you don't want to learn anything, you do what you do and that's it, then it's not a very positive mindset to have. But if you're always learning something new and you're constantly being quite humble about it, if there's other people that who maybe are newer on their journey, but they brought something to the table, that's great. Because I think for me, it's always important to keep learning, and it doesn't matter who that's from or where it's from. As long as you're learning something new, it helps as well with that.
Yeah, and I think that, again, and kind of getting to know you, you had mentioned that a lesson you had learned was knowing your worth, and like, and understanding that there is value that you can bring, that you are the expert, you can do this. I mean, what sort of advice would you have for people listening that, feel like they're not the expert, feel like they, often think these same thoughts of imposter syndrome or not actually knowing their worth? What sort of advice would you have for those people listening?
So I'd say it's important to understand that not everyone is going to have something that they don't understand or don't know. Excuse me. So from that point of view, if you think about it, not everyone's an expert in everything. There's going to be something that someone doesn't understand, and if you're an expert in an area but you still don't know something, that's okay. As long as you handle that the right way, then it's not a problem. It's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. But what I will do is I'll go away and find that answer for you, and I'll come back to you on that and actually follow through with that as well. If you start to try and make things up or fumble your way through it, that's when it becomes problematic, because I think that then probably damages, one, the trust of the client or whoever you're speaking to, and two, your credibility as well. I think it's important to be well informed, but definitely don't be afraid to say that you don't know the answer to something. As long as you're willing to learn and find the answer, then that's absolutely fine, because that's how you become an expert. You need to learn.
Yeah. Are there I don't know, are there things you do practically to combat that when you think those thoughts, or maybe when you would think those thoughts, or different things? Are there things that you do to help mitigate feeling that way? This is a question that might be kind of on the spot, but I'm trying to put myself in, I really don't have to put myself in someone else's shoes. I'm by no means an expert. I'm just a consultant. I'm no, senior consultant and senior architect. That's not me. I'm often on calls where they're talking about something and I'm like, I have no idea what we are talking about right now. What's something maybe you practically do in those moments, whether you're on calls or just after a call and you need to do something?
So I think for me, one of the most important things to do is actually just switch off altogether from tech. spend a lot of time in front of a computer, doing what I do, and it can be very overwhelming, and that can take up and consume a lot of your life. But sometimes just switching off, and for me, going out during my lunch break and walking the dog, for example, just to clear my mind and come back to it with a fresh set of eyes, it can really make a big difference. Likewise, if I'm stuck with a difficult challenge, for example, just switching off and calling it quits at a certain point in time can be really good, because you'll later find yourself kind of in the middle of the night just waking up thinking, I now have something that I think will solve that problem that I've been kind of working with for the entire day or week or whatever. So just stepping away and taking a break can be massive for that, in my opinion.
No, I think that's awesome. I think, yeah, like a healthy amount of intentional breaks, not just like scrolling on your phone or whatever. At least my generation, that's what we tend to do, when we're bored or, want a break. But like, no, let me go, like you said, walk the dog. Let me go eat lunch out of the house. I've recently been enjoying like going to a local coffee shop, taking my laptop, and just like the switch up of scenery has been huge for me recently. So I completely agree. I love that there. I would love to, again, transition the conversation. My transitions today aren't impeccable, but, you kind of shared a little bit about your story to kind of where you're at now and the 7-ish years and the Power Platform and everything. I mean, I would love to just kind of give you the floor and hear more of the Josh Giles story of kind of how you've developed your career in a way to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think fairly interesting in that I never wanted to get into tech initially. It was always my aspirations to do something completely different. I think when I was at school and college, I wanted to join the military and do that side of things, and that was always something from a young age that I wanted to do. And I just kind of fell into a tech job, and that kind of IT support role that I fell into kind of maybe ignited my passion for tech a little bit. So that was good. It was a great way to get experience on how computers work, how servers work, also how to speak to and deal with customers. So a lot of the time I was dealing with very challenging customers. Their computer had broken or the server wasn't working, fix it type thing. So it was a great kind of experience to have. And then after that, I think I wanted just a bit of a curveball and do something completely different. So I went into the construction trade. So my dad works in construction, so I ended up doing that. Actually doing like building walls and ceilings for a good year, which was actually really great. I enjoyed the physicalness of it, being hands-on, and that was great seeing like what you could create type thing. I think that's why I enjoy what I do so much now, is seeing that kind of vision come to life is really great. So I did that for a year, and then I ended up moving up to Scotland, which is where I live now. And I ended up just kind of going back into a tech role, and that was just again doing more or less IT support, going on-site visits for clients, managing almost like an MSP type thing, which is again great experience. Then after that, by doing that, we started to encounter clients that had things like SharePoint, and that started to kind of pique my interest a little bit. And I got into SharePoint, ended up getting a job doing primarily SharePoint work. I did that for a number of years before I again found the Power Platform. When it came out, it was a really kind of interesting tool that you could kind of use. I was very curious. I started playing around with it, and then before you know it, I kind of landed a job doing that. And now, basically from that point onwards, it's always been doing Power Platform, either in a consultant, developer, role, until I got to the point to where I am now doing solution architecture. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I'm very interested to see kind of where my journey goes in the next few years, and it's a very exciting kind of space at the minute.
It is very exciting. One final question here. So, what kind of advice would you have for somebody's come across this episode and they're kind of in that SIT role that you were referring to, 8 years ago or so, 9 years ago, and their interest is now peaked into Power Platform. I mean, what sort of advice would you have for that person as far as, why you have enjoyed the switch and why they might as well?
Yeah, I think for me, the switch from SharePoint to Power Platform was great because SharePoint's a product that already exists, that you kind of have to do things within that kind of boundary. Whereas Power Platform, you've got a lot of freedom of expression, and that really kind of, for me, was something that I really enjoy. I enjoy seeing that kind of freedom of expression come out, and seeing how people can tackle a problem using the Power Platform. My advice would be, if you wanted to get into a Power Platform role, is just go for it. I think in my experience, a lot of companies will take that kind of eagerness and that willingness to learn as something that's sometimes more important than experience itself. So I would say alongside that, just keep learning. Don't kind of take your foot off the accelerator. Just keep learning and understanding how things work, and if that's making your own portfolio of apps and being able to showcase that as your first role or whatever it may be, I think that's really important. But just don't be afraid to take that jump. It can, you never know what may happen. You might get knocked back, and I've been knocked back plenty of times, but ultimately you will get someone that kind of sees your worth and your value and can see what you can bring to the table.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, myself included, had zero, Power Platform, Microsoft Dynamics experience when I started, and I was very fortunate with the situation that I had. But nonetheless, there's opportunities out there. There's people who are willing to bring you on and then train you, and teach you Microsoft Dynamics, Power Platform. I mean, I was Googling this stuff in my interviews, like what is Microsoft Dynamics, and different things. So, echoing what you're saying there, Josh, like, yeah, if you're out there, let us encourage you. There's a space for you here, and I mean, I know Josh and I really enjoy it. So, that's awesome. I would love to. Dude, I'm on a high right now. That's fire. That is so good. What a wholesome moment here to almost wrap up our episode. I mean, I'd love to transition us to the after hours happy hour segment of the show, and this is where we talk about anything and everything outside of work. We're outside of the office. We've kind of loosened up our ties a little bit. I mean, it's no secret that looks like you're a Lego guy. I mean, you're showcasing them in the background there behind you. I'd love to ask you about your Lego collection. Why Legos? I'm not hating, just wondering why Legos. I see a Star Wars Lego trend going on. I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, so I've only really got back into Lego in the past couple of years. It's a great way just to switch off and build something relatively quickly. So before I did Lego, I was I still do it from time to time. I was quite big on like aircraft modeling, so like Tamiya kits, the plastic model kits that you can put together. But they're very time consuming. One small model kit can take it took me months to complete. So although it's very, very rewarding at the end of it, it's a very kind of high skill level to kind of do that stuff. So I find Lego is a good kind of middle ground. I'm still building something, I'm still being creative, but I can do it in a much quicker manner and a lot more kind of structured manner than I can with like aircraft modeling. So it's a great way. And I've got a wife and a kid, so it's a great way to balance that, still have that outlet but not take up too much time.
Yeah, for sure. What's the most recent Lego pickup or a couple parts of your collection that you really enjoy?
Yeah, so that one, the Imperial Star Destroyer, that's the latest one. So that's probably one of my favourites, along with the non-Star Wars one there, which is the Tallneck from the Horizon series, which is the PlayStation game, which again is something I also really enjoy as well. So
there you go.
Yeah, those two are the particular call-outs, I'd say, in my collection.
Are you a PlayStation gamer then? Are you a part of the PlayStation crowd?
Yeah, I am. So I managed to get a PS5 last year, and it's been great. I do enjoy it. I think I don't game as much as I used to. I used to be a massive PC gamer back in the day, but those days are long gone. But I love a PlayStation because you can just pick it up and drop it down when you need to. So it's great. So I really enjoy it.
Completely. I grew up on an Xbox, so always despising PlayStation. Never have been a part of the PlayStation community, Been supporting Microsoft since day one. All right, that's not talking. I'm just kidding. On the Xbox, but I made the transition to a PC in January of 2021. So I bought my GPU at pretty much the worst possible time ever in the history of the world. Peak after COVID 2021. But nonetheless, neither here nor there. But I do find that I have an Xbox controller, and so I still play most of my games, because you're right, it just feels so much more casual and just like actual entertainment to me, at least, because that's kind of how I grew up playing, is with a controller. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome, man. Josh, I appreciate you being here. I mean, approachable and friendly is not a lie. I appreciate you being here and the availability you've made and all the insights that you've shared today.
It's been brilliant being on. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. If people were impacted by this conversation and wanted to connect with you or get in contact with you, what would be the best way to reach you?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn's probably the best way. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so yeah, you can reach out to me on there. I'll probably get back to you fairly quickly.
There you go. I will have a link to your LinkedIn in the description down below, and that's exactly how I got in contact with you as well. So again, Josh, man, I appreciate you being here. Thank you to you for sticking to end the video. My name is Griffin Lickfeld, the host of the Citizen Developer channel, and I'm excited to connect with you in the next one.